Thank you, everyone who is already joining. And hello, everyone. We will start in a couple of minutes as more and more people are joining in, just to make sure no one misses any valuable content. In the meantime, in this buffer time, thought I'd give you a bit of an intro into this roundtable. It is about social media during this time. We kind of decided that obviously social media is an essential part of almost any business nowadays, but since COVID-19 started, a lot of questions came up from social media managers and from marketers around the world. One of these questions were, what are the audience's needs right now? Because that seems to be changing. How we deliver the right message at the right time. What are the channels that should kind of take front and center now? And should we invest more or less in social media? There is so much uncertainty of how we should proceed with content now. And we've done already 2 webinars on for helping marketers during this time. So if there's one thing that we learned is that if we get some awesome people in a virtual room together, we can get some amazing answers. Both brands and agencies found themselves in the situation of adapting their social media strategy, and we kind of looked at data, we analyzed everything, and we decided to make this a discussion. I think, the important thing to remember is that it's okay to not know what to do now. And if there's one thing that we've learned, at least for me in the past few months, is that the world can adapt quickly, and people are extremely resourceful, and you can see unbelievable results during the most uncertain times. So yeah, that's my intro. Now, about this webinar, what it's going to happen is that we will have a chat with the 3 guests that we have on. We have prepared a few questions, but we also have the Q&A section, which will stay open throughout the entire thing. I will take a constant look at it, and I'll try to ask the questions as we go whenever I find the right context. And yeah, that's about how this will work. Now we have absolutely 3 amazing guests who have agreed to join us today, and I'm so thankful that they have. Let me quickly introduce them. First, we are joined by Alex Khan, who is the CEO of Attractive Media. Attractive Media is a online marketing agency that has specialized in web development and SEO services and digital media. Alex has over 15 years of experience, so I'm pretty sure he can offer some super insightful thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us, Alex.
Well, thanks for having me.
Next is Lee Odden, CEO of TopRank Marketing, a B2B marketing agency established in 2001. They offer influencer marketing, content marketing, and search marketing. And from my own experience, I can tell you they have a killer blog and offer some pretty amazing resources. So Lee, thank you so much for saying yes to this.
Well, thank you, Marina. It's great to be here.
And last but not least, we have David Coomer, the CEO of Coomer, a consultancy dedicated to big ideas. David is absolutely brilliant. I can tell you that I've met him when he reached out with some absolutely amazing ideas for Planable. So thank you, David, for doing this.
No, it's great to be here. Thanks for the invite. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Okay, so I see a lot of people have tuned in. So once again, thank you everyone who has in the meantime, and to all our panelists. I think we're ready to kick it off. The way I wanted to start this conversation is by talking about, the overview about the industry and the changes we've all seen lately, post and during COVID. I'm a fan of numbers, so I'll start by sharing some data. I kind of tried to find a few stats that are relevant right now, so I just wanted to share those. The first thing that I found is that I think in March, the number of active Facebook users in the US increased by 2.5%. On Instagram, it increased by 3.7%. There was a decrease of 27% in imagery displaying human interaction, which is kind of duh. Um, TikTok downloads surged by 315 million in Q1 2020, so that was pretty amazing. In April, there was an increase of an average of 44 engagements per day across all networks and industries. And the last data that I've got is that 80% of consumers in the US and UK say they have consumed more content since the outbreak. So it seems like at least most of the stats are going up in terms of social, and there's space out there. I'm curious about what you've noticed. So David, let's start with you. How do you find people's behavior has changed on social during COVID-19?
You know, I really think it's evolved pretty rapidly. I think it'll continue to evolve, but I believe the first phase of that was almost this panic and people are scrambling. And I mean, it's similar to brands, you know, the pattern's similar, you know, we're trying to figure out like how to get through this and what to do, right? The next part of that, I think after settling in, people started sharing screenshots of them working remotely or conversations like this. You know, it's like, hey, we're still at work, you know, and then I think the next phase has been more like interest, you know, and people are diving really deep into, you know, things they're passionate about, hobbies, in really niche spaces. And then having this online conversation about those things, you know, where they're not connecting with people, but they're finding a different sort of connection and building these kind of subcultures and communities about things they're into, whether it's mixology or cooking or games or whatever. I see that sort of thing amplifying. So it's kind of gone from this panic to navigating things to figuring out work life to also sharing all those into what I think is more of a video heavy, community based sort of approach around passions and things they're really, really interested in.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and it's I can only guess, but and see that brands are starting to get into those conversations as well, and trying to find that one passion that they can talk about that their audience might have. So yeah, okay. Now, Alex, wanted to ask you if you've noticed a certain preference of a certain type of content format during this time, if that changed a bit, and if so, how?
Yeah, I mean, based on what David said, is of course, we are moving into a video-centric world because that's the closest to communication that we have right now. And of course, one layer above it is live video. So we see a lot of brands and a lot of people utilizing the power of live video to be connected. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg was once asked, like, what's the reason for the great success of Facebook? And his response was, our basic need in humans is about being connected, about talking with each other. And that's what Facebook is all about. And there's another interesting stat. Actually, they came up with 3 weeks ago that it's the first time that the Facebook environment, I mean, Facebook, Messenger, Instagram, WhatsApp, hit more than 3 billion people, which is a lot if you think about a company which is just around 15, 16 years old. So definitely video, also long form video for the very first time. IGTV we see works out very well, live videos working out very well. But when it comes down to businesses, you need to think on the goal, right? If it's a prospecting campaign, then video works very well. If it's a remarketing campaign, then images work better. So we always have to align our communication a bit to the goal we want to achieve.
Yeah.
But right now, the main goal is about staying connected, showing we're still here, we care.
Yeah, I like that because, you know, the impulse is to always see the latest stat or trend and just take it on without kind of filtering through what your brand needs or if it even applies to your brand. So yeah, really good insight. Thank you. Okay, now Lee, I wanted to ask you about the brand side of things, how they are adapting. What are they doing differently? What have you seen here?
Well, I think a lot of, a lot of companies have felt the sting of staying with status quo and continuing to do what they're doing or what they've been doing by being outed as no, this is tone deaf marketing. I think of KFC UK's finger licking good videos, not such a good idea in these times, or Sandals putting out vacation email solicitations. Who's traveling really,
Yeah.
So they're making changes that are less about product marketing and sales and more about empathy for the customer, more about purpose, more about utility. And if they're lucky enough to work in an industry where the brand solution actually helps people in this new normal of working remotely, well, then they're doubling down on how they can articulate the value of those solutions. And so I think there are companies who are tangentially related in their industry to what people are experiencing today. And they're trying to find ways to find common ground with their customers. And, I think we're starting to get to the tail end of this phase of we're in this challenging time and we're here to support you. People are really getting tired of that.
Yeah.
And they want to move on to, something else. And I think that something else is providing utility, authentic, or the brand showing itself as an authentic partner to the customer, as an authentic source of value to the customer, versus marketing hype or clever messaging or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good point that, the audience is just, it feels a bit like the brands have for a while standardized messaging. It feels like the branding from a lot of the brands has completely disappeared, and audiences don't need that anymore. And that's actually why the next topic that I had on my list about the needs of our audiences, because I feel like it's very fascinating that we have the same people, we talk to the same people, but the needs of these people has completely changed overnight, and we kind of have, it feels a bit like we're back to square one to discovering what these people want from our brands. So that's what I want to talk to you about now. So Alex, how do you assess now what your audience wants from you during this time? Is it testing? Is it asking, research? How do you do that?
Well, luckily, there is a lot of research out there, what people want right now. And what we can see is that people are looking for brands with a purpose, right? Brands they can trust. And I believe it, first of all, I mean, when we think about social media, we have that great advantage that it's not just a pushing tool, it's also a pulling tool, right? We can listen more than we speak. We can A/B test different ads with different messages, different media, and see what works. We can take Google and see what Google Trends are doing. Like, for example, when all the hairdressers in Germany were closed, people were looking for ways how they cut their hairs themselves, right? They were looking for products which they can help. So I believe using social media and using Google is a great gateway to understand what people right now are looking for. And then it's the matter of the company to understand which assets they got to fulfill the needs of the clients and the customers. So it's a mix of it. Taking a look at the research, definitely using the power of digitization, and third, doing A/B testing to see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. And a lot of it feels like it's in moving fast, right? Because today people need combs and tomorrow they want some sort of ingredient to make bread at home. I mean, it feels like we're taking on passions in bulk. So yeah, it's the pressure is high to respond then and there. Okay, so how about Yuli? I wanted to ask you about the fact that about B2B audiences, right? Because it's been like 2 months of uncertainty already, and you know the needs of everyone is changing. So how about B2B audiences? What is different about them?
Well, we've seen that, you know, what they're not responding to is the status quo type of messaging, right? So those types of offers of lead nurturing and all that sort of thing, they're just not. What they are responding well to is to be empowered. And I can't remember the article I was reading, but they were talking about the trend towards more do-it-yourself marketing, do-it-yourself. People are looking to do it yourself more for themselves. And interestingly enough, there's an angle there in terms of do-it-yourself marketing. What I mean by that, people are not responding to the push so much, but they're responding very well to the pull, meaning that buyers are empowered to use things like Google to pull themselves to solutions. And of course, this has always been the case with SEO. This is the wonderful thing about SEO. But now more than ever, we're seeing pretty dramatic increases in search usage for people to find things that they can do on their own to do themselves. And in B2B, the work hasn't stopped. People are still buying enterprise software and hardware and making these large business types of purchases. And we're seeing increasingly they're using search to source those solutions. One of the other things that we're finding that is happening is, you know, there's some level of distrust with what they are finding, right? And so this is a good time for us because we've seen an increase in demand for what we do at our company. And that is a combination of social, well, social is always a part of it, right? But social influence and SEO. So what I'm saying is by finding credible experts and partnering with them to tell the stories to your customers about why the solution is important, instead of the brand beating their chest, articulating those features and benefits as they used to do all the time. We're finding that that combination with search has proven to be very, very powerful so that buyers are able to pull themselves to something that's interesting and useful to them. And then when they get there, someone they respect, someone they trust, as well as the brand, is articulating how to and providing utility types of information, and even increasingly infotaining formats, you know, adding a little humor, you know, the video podcasts as far as interestingness, interactive sometimes. And that all bundled together is really a shift I see that's happening right now. And I think that's going to continue going forward because what we're experiencing now as normal isn't going to, well, it's not going away anytime soon. You know, Zoom is part of our lives forever.
Yeah.
Or at least for a while.
Yeah, for sure. And this trend in kind of copy and the approach to in B2B, it feels like it's slowly but surely taking over. You know, the old way of talking as a B2B brand feels like it's dying, you know, that very formal attitude to show or impose that you have expertise or whatever.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot more collaborative approaches working in B2B where you have some tactics from B2C in terms of creators making content or shows being created by consumers or customers themselves. I mean, there's a lot more lessons from B2C coming over into B2B, and it's less about boring to boring and more about, you know, interesting to interesting. Yeah,
thanks. That's really insightful, catches the essence of everything. Okay, so now the next person I want to ask is David regarding the same question, kind of audiences and understanding how their needs have changed. What did you notice here? What do they want? I know you already mentioned passions, but
right.
Right.
Yeah, I think that the brands that are really doing the best job is fulfilling that lifestyle and human connection of it. At least from, you know, an observation, I think Patron's doing a really great job with that you see, you know, they have efforts in supporting bartenders, mixologists, a very big program with Patron Bacardi. But also you see those same home bartenders, home mixologists, like they're creating content. Like everyone usually in your sphere of the brand is now a content creator. They're figuring it out, right? Like they're cooking live, or they're making drinks, or they're hanging with friends. So leveraging people like that, they don't even have to be an influencer. They just have to be someone that's having fun and connecting and sharing information and insights and making things. And that becomes a huge asset and a great resource that's different than your traditional agency resource. It's a little different than your traditional social strategy. Those sort of things are always in there, but now you can plug that in and create with something like that so easily, because people are looking for that human connection. Like for some people, a Zoom call like this is a highlight of the day. It's like, oh, there's people. It's exciting. Or they jump into an Instagram story, or live, and just really learn something, or watch an artist studio visit, or hang with the DJ, or learn how to make a Manhattan or a certain cocktail. So I think that's the thing that brands that are doing it well are fulfilling, is like they're staying true to who they are. They're not kind of letting the tail wag the dog and learning too much about the crisis and different behaviors shape who they are, but they're also lifting up people who are part of their brand community and giving them a voice, because people are looking for that. Like you said, they're taking on kind of passions in bulk, so they also go really, really deep with those and want to engage, beyond a comment. Like they want to really learn about something. They have a little extra time on their hands, or, this could become a side hustle or whatever. So they're really interested in more. And when you lift people up and give people within your brand world a voice, people are really receptive to that and engaging with that through the roof.
So yeah, so user-generated content is one of the tricks that you can do at the moment.
Yeah.
I find that, yeah, I honestly haven't thought about that. And I find it interesting that I say, because it felt like lately it was a bit abandoned, because just for the fear of having no response to that call as a brand. And now it's the time to try to test it again, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. Next in line is talking about the right message at the right time. We have already established that we have to understand what our audience wants. We have to call it to participate. And now I want to talk a bit about the brands that are doing this right. They're crafting the right message at the right time and choosing the right channel. And a bit about experimenting. So Lee, I want to ask you about the openness that brands have right now to try new things. Are they willing to do that, or do they just keep everything at a hold and just want to do what they were already doing?
Sure. Well, there are some brands who are feeling the pain right now, and so out of necessity, they have to pivot and maybe have to, do things that would fit in the category of experimentation. In our case, most of the pivoting has really been pivoting about messages more than business models, and although that is certainly happening, right? And so there is some experimentation. More, as Alex was mentioning, video. We're doing a lot more with LinkedIn Live now, and that's very promising. And there's some other formats that are out there that are that not traditionally B2B specific, that are video centric, live streaming, just as an example, I guess, not just on LinkedIn, that we're starting to more brands are starting to experiment with. There's in B2B, the lead is, the sale, the lead, it's really what everyone's after, right? Ultimately. And so we're seeing a lot more companies implementing what we call social first campaigns. And so that is really, now's the time to do that, because, we're looking at how do we articulate our brand purpose and empathy with the customer in an authentic way, and in our case, we're connecting with people who are influential. And of course, that doesn't have to be a famous person. It's just someone who has domain expertise and has a network in the B2B space, and asking them questions that result in value provided to the audience, insights, trends, best practices, and using social first campaigns simply as a way to draw attention to the values that are aligning the brand with its own customers. And doing that through social without the expectation of generating a lead or a sale per se. And so this is an experimental thing that more B2B brands that I'm working with or my agency is working with are doing, whereas before it was all about, campaigns and lead nurturing and lead gen, demand gen, and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's kind of it forces some brands, and some brands are just testing the waters, but it might be one of the best times to experiment, right? For some, at least.
Well, it's interesting because you're right. It is one of the best times because who's going to blame you for changing up your tactics a little bit? The expectations, there's the challenge of uncertainty and not knowing for sure. I mean, you look at an individual at a brand, their job's on the line, like literally, right? As the business is changing. And so they still have to perform. They still have to deliver. And yet now they can't use those explicit or tried and true marketing tactics they used to use. So there's some feeling of uncertainty about experimentation. But once they get over the hump that, look, you have to, it's out of necessity that you're going to have to start doing that. And I think the answer to, or the line between uncertainty and confidence is data. And it is, those acts of empathy that pull in insights from your customers that are paying attention to how people discover, consume, and act on information, using those insights and using those insights to drive your strategy, whether it's full out campaign and marketing or whether it's some sort of pilot or experimentation.
Right. I have a follow-up question, sorry, but since, it makes so much sense that you should experiment at the moment, but I have one question regarding data, because the fear would be that if you, for example, have been doing one thing forever, I don't know, sharing your blog posts on social, you've been doing that forever and ever and ever, and you stop doing that and you start doing video, and then your numbers change, right? But let's say they go up or down, it doesn't matter. But will you know if those numbers have changed because the new type of content or the new approach works, or because that's how the world works now, because it has changed from yesterday?
Sure. Well, it's going to be some of both, but you've got to set up your programs with the proper testing methodology, the proper analytics methodology, so you can tell what's actually working, what's not, I mean,
yeah.
And to be honest, companies should be doing this anyway.
Yeah, COVID or no COVID.
Yeah, and so I'm sure there's consultants on this Zoom that can help you with your campaigns to set them up properly.
Yeah, and to ensure that you can rely on your data. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's going to be more real-time data, first-party data. If you can do focus groups, if you can do questions with your customers qualitatively to ask them what has changed about how you do what you do, that coupled with experimentation, A/B testing, multivariate testing, whatever kind of testing you want to do, I think is the answer.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds really good. I'm almost. I want to do my own experiments now. I'm powered up. Okay. Cool. So, Alex, my next question is to you. I wanted to just ask you about an example that you found during this time of a message that has been at the right time and on the right channel from a brand.
I mean, there are lots of great examples from big brands. I'm a big fan of the small business owners to see how they are dealing with that situation. So what we see, and it got huge media coverage whenever somebody does it, is, I mean, especially small businesses, they are confronted with a totally new situation. I mean, their revenue in some ways turned back to zero, but they still have their employees. And what we can see, what is not a tactic, but it's really the truth, is about speaking out and sharing the situation via live video, for example, to explain their clients, we are still there for you. We are still open. We have 50 employees, 10 employees, 5 employees, 5 families to feed. Please support us. Go still to your local bakery, butcher, you name it, and using the digital ways, which cost millions like 20 years ago. Now it's just taking your smartphone and going live on Instagram, and people are sharing because they're resonating with the message. They're sharing it. So just talking the truth about how they feel and how it affects their business is or was, now it's getting better, but is in my still a great way to put out the right message at the right time with the right platform, which is going live and just sharing what happens in your life.
Have you found that some business owners are scared of showing that kind of vulnerability?
Of course. I mean, people want to prefer to show their strength. And usually marketing is like, look at us. This is what we can do, right? This is what we do for you. And now it doesn't work. I mean, nobody wants to see somebody who's hard selling facts or is hard selling their core messages. It's about showing purpose. People want to see that other brands are caring for them, are caring for the environment, but also, and that's a very new point, caring for the employees. So that's one message we can see that works extraordinarily well, because people care for people. And I believe now is the right time to show that you are a business owner who also does that, to care for all the shareholders, you know, not just for the customers.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a real change. No one used to look that with that much attention behind the scenes before. So yeah. Okay. Now, David, we already talked a bit about types of content, and video seems to be winning, but have you found anything, or do you agree with live streaming? What do you think works in terms of format now? Do you see the trends changing?
Yeah, I do, and really agree with Alex too, and what he's saying in terms of local business. But I think what's changing the most, you know, for not just live but video content, it's much it's rawer, it's faster. People really don't care that it's not hyper polished. You know, the frequency of it's the most important thing. You know, so I have a friend that's a chef, and he's hosting interviews like this with other restaurateurs and how they're navigating the situation. It's episodic content. It's a show, essentially. You know, so people understand the format of it. So when he goes live with the interview, you know exactly what you're about to watch. It's like watching TV, right? That sort of approach, it's interesting to see where that will evolve. And I absolutely don't think that everyone's comfortable with it, kind of as you mentioned, you know, but those that are going to come out of this as an extraordinary, like they'll have an extraordinary product. They'll be totally different. They'll have loyalty and engagement and affinity for who they are, their purpose, what they're doing, that will be really, really hard to break. And I think that that's just a whole new behavior in terms of content creation. And it doesn't necessarily have to be live video or video. I think that imagery is the same. It's just the frequency of the content and the audience. You know, it's just like an influencer. You know, we got to stop thinking about normal advertising, marketing, messaging, RTB content to do the hard sell. And if you look at an influencer, they're already doing that, right? Like a YouTuber knows more about the algorithm and behaviors and viewership than like any social strategist by like a mile. You know, it's not even close. And the same for TikTok or Instagram or whatever. So the behavior that we're seeing is like brands are starting to emulate some of those tactics, right? Because influencers don't have $1 million budget to create a video. They, you know, that's where they're focusing all of their energy. They don't have paid media to promote every bit of it. So that's the same situation most brands are in right now. So whether they realize it or not, the adjustments they're making and the pivots they're making there's incredible case studies already there created by influencers. That blueprint is there. People that are vulnerable, they're sharing their story. It's really engaging and meaningful, or it's informative, or it's entertaining. All of those blueprints are really there. But the thing in common is it's a lot quicker, it's a lower production, and it is on a schedule that you know when to tune in, you know what to expect. I mean, everyone we follow on social, you probably follow them for a reason, and then that influencer or creator puts that almost on a schedule, whether they know it or not, you know, whether they call it brand strategy or they just know that's when they get the most engagement and people want to connect with them. So that's really how I think that content's changing. And I believe we'll come out of this and it'll be amplified, you know, that it'll be taken to an entirely another level, you know, for all of marketing, you know, and those that are on the front lines and taking those risks, or that's the only vehicle for communication they have, I think are going to come out of this a totally different animal, a much stronger organization or individual, and it'll be really exciting to see it grow from there.
Yeah, I find this captivating because it's like that one missing link that the brands were looking to find to fit in, and they're just now a bit starting to blend in with what social really is about. You know, it's not about studios or dozens of photographers from different angles. It's just about showing a bit of authenticity, right?
It really is. And I think as agencies, it's also nice for, you know, all marketers to see we don't have to come in and deliver the most polished high-end production to impress the client or for the consumer to think it's engaging, right? So I think that the raw nature of it, I hope, creates an even, you know, because we're usually the ones that are shaping those things, you know, and or at least selling the strategy on why to invest in it, you know, and ideally the production value goes way down. You know, I think there's certain things you need great gear, but like the talent, the speed, the frequency, the engagement of how the community managers connect with people, I think is going to write an entirely new chapter for marketing altogether, not just social marketing.
Yeah, yeah. I'm really excited to see what happens after this and how brands actually what they'll keep and what they won't.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Next up is talking about investing in social media. It's a question that I feel a lot of marketers have lately. Is now the time to make changes, to start investing more in social media campaigns, or to just put everything at a halt? And I want to stress that I'm not necessarily talking about financial investments per se, right? But just time and resources, you know, to see what works, what doesn't, or to just be out there. So is now the time to start developing more and to get into the conversation frequent and with content, or just take a break and until, you know, things get back to normal? Lee, I kind of have a feeling what you'll think, but what do you think?
Sure. And I think you've answered part of the question. Now is the time, because people have more time to spend on social. They are exhibiting that behavior. And so, you know, as a marketer deciding where to invest time, resources, technology, if your customers are there, that's where you need to be. And you can be there and be helpful. You can help drive conversations. You can sell, I suppose, but really right now you can do all the things you need to be doing, and in a place, in a format that is attractive and of interest to customers. So I think now is absolutely the time to be invested in social in all the ways you can do that. Again, it's like you say, it's not just financial investment, but it's also, you know, your human resources, your staff. It's also technology and time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those channels where you could really have the potential to do more with less, right?
Absolutely. And it really you have to answer the question, why? I mean, what are you after? And all marketers should be doing that anyway. But, you know, during this time of uncertainty, making a joke there. You know, a lot of people are chasing shiny objects, and they'll read an article or see something like this, and someone might say a particular thing is what you've got to do, and then they go do that thing without any thoughtfulness about what matters to your customers. And Alex has mentioned this many times. You know, you've got to really be in tune with what your buyers want, David too. And so that's really got to drive. You know, that's going to be the filter through which you make that investment, of course.
Yeah. Okay. Now, let's say you do want to start investing more. The question for you, Alex, is how do you convince the management that you should make that switch and put focus on social media?
Well, first of all, I totally agree with what Lee just said. I mean, I believe the brands who succeed in nowadays time are the ones who understand the practicality of the moment. And what I mean by that is you have to go to these places where, as Lee said, their audience are spending their valuable time. And as we follow up on the stats you shared in the beginning, this is digital, this is social media right now. And brands understand that they have to run some kind of ads. They need to use advertising for branding and for performance reasons. And we have traditional media and we have digital media, right? So let's maybe compare these two, right? Or maybe just focus on the digital part right now. There are a couple of reasons why digital media works. First of all, when we think of social media, you can pinpoint, you can very carefully target the right audience. If I'm, for example, running a baby clothing store, I can target 29-year-old moms with their 1-year-old kid in a radius of 1 mile around my clothing store, which is amazing. There is no other possibility besides Google where you can do that, right? Then second, you don't need a big budget. I mean, you can start running ads with $5 per day, right? That's it. I mean, it's different when you do a radio campaign, a TV campaign, a print campaign. It takes much more money. And last but not least, you can measure each step of your funnel. I mean, you can in real time measure different creatives with different target audiences with one goal above it and iterate. And that's what makes it beautiful. You know, it's not a big invest. Of course, you need probably help at the beginning to set it up, or you just watch a couple of YouTube videos and try it yourself. I mean, the information is out there, it's commoditized. So it's just you and your mindset to give it a try and see how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good argument, especially for people who don't believe in social. Like, okay, you don't believe in social, but there's numbers. I can show you. It's not faith. It doesn't require faith, right? It's just data.
I mean, my biggest metaphor around this is if you ask me, what's the return on investment of a football? And we here in Germany, as you know, we love football. For me, it's zero because I can't play. Right? If you would ask the same question to Cristiano Ronaldo, he would come up with $1 billion. And the same is for Facebook. If Facebook ads or Instagram ads doesn't work for you, this company makes 60 billion a year out of ads. I mean, there are tons of brands, millions of companies who run ads. If it doesn't work out for you, it's the same with me with a football. You just have to learn it. You have to give it a try, and then it will work.
Yeah. Well, Cristiano Ronaldo, not tomorrow, but it will
Probably
work.
not.
Okay. Awesome. Good. So now, David, I wanted to follow up a bit here and continue the conversation regarding how social media's role is changing, because it feels a bit like for so many companies until now, it was some sort of an awareness channel, just share whatever we're already producing. Do you feel like that role is changing? Is it becoming something bigger?
I think the cost of it's becoming bigger. I mean, you know, I think 10 to 15 years ago, it was like social media is free. Why not be on it? You know, it's a free way to build awareness. And, you know, that awareness tag has kind of carried over for probably too long. And because the cost of it, it's incredibly expensive. I mean, it takes a lot of people to engage. You know, if you're talking about a brand and managing a community of 1 million people, even 30,000 people, it's a handful. You know, it takes a lot, right? So it isn't free, you know, but it doesn't mean it's not valuable. I think it's changing the conversation, that it's like, quit looking at it as an awareness vehicle. You know, this needs to be, in my opinion, I think that social, in the new age of social, needs to look at it as your D2C comp play mixed with serial content to build loyalty and affinity. I mean, so it really should be your ROI/loyalty engine. You know, there's some brands that, you know, back to even content producers like Overtime, Basketball Highlights, you know, companies like that don't even care if they have a website, and they sell millions of t-shirts and, you know, all kinds of things like that, right? Like, but brands don't really market like that. You know, they think about it like maybe they have one social media manager, or maybe they have a pretty big team and they're still looking at it as an awareness vehicle. But if you look at Yeti, if you look at GoPro, every post is tagged with viable tags, you know, and it's all UGC, and it's all incredible, and it's an amazing follow. I mean, there's a lot of camera companies, they're all not going viral or selling that heavily online. They're not the only camera company on earth. They're just doing it better than anyone, you know. So it's, and they take it very serious. If you look at a D2C commerce play, like Instagram is massive for that, right? So the spirits category that I've worked in a lot, and we've built a lot of big brands, and you know, in a previous life, I was working with incredible teams and deep teams, managing a lot of content and creating good shows and doing a lot of interesting things. Industries like that have regulations that, you know, going to direct to consumer, and certainly within these sort of channels. But because of the environment we're in right now, that sort of stuff is kind of stepping out of the way, where you can sell direct to consumer as a distillery, that there are partners like a Drizzly that do, you know, fulfillment of spirits. So even brands like that that have traditionally had an excuse, that even as a marketer, you're like, oh, this is awareness because we can't tie it to commerce, right? Because we have this multi-tier system. Where culture is today, it's changing, certainly under terrible circumstance, but brands like that, I think, need to shift the thinking that this is no longer awareness. This is an incredible economic engine for D2C commerce. By the way, if we create serial content around such product, we build incredible loyalty and brand affinity, and truly connect with people in kind of the lifestyle brand community everyone tries to sell themselves that they're making, you know. So I think it's this culmination of things that hopefully people intentionally stop thinking about it as an awareness tactic and look at it as a very serious tactic to grow the business.
Yeah. It sounds, you know, really interesting, the whole shift of it all, and it's just captivating to watch, even not even to participate, just to look at what's happening. I wanted to ask you, Lee, a bit of a detour here, but I know you mentioned very shortly about influencer marketing, but I'm wondering how that area is doing right now, because, you know, influencers are so dependent, rely so heavily on brands investing and on social media marketing. So I'm curious, what is that sector doing?
Sure. Well, in the B2B and B2C are quite different. So if you're in B2C, times are a little bit challenging, although there's still many, many opportunities. So if you're obviously in travel, hospitality, retail, times are a bit tough as an influencer in those spaces. And yet there's still commerce still happening. There's still interest in those topics. So there's still content that can be created, just not shot on location necessarily, or not in the same way. And in B2B, we're finding, well, there's a study here, I'll give you there's a study by Demand Gen Report, a B2B organization, and 95% of B2B buyers prefer content with industry experts in it. I mean, that's huge. So people are searching, right? They're literally searching on Google, but they're searching for answers. They're searching for, practical information in B2B. They're searching for inspiration. They're searching for infotainment, as we like to call it. And what ties that all together in terms of what B2B brands can do with influencers, we call being the best answer. So that, because being the best answer is being where the customer's looking, but then it's being credible once they find you. And that's an opportunity where B2B companies are partnering with industry experts, internal experts that are employees, customers, and even prospects in some cases, and collaborating on content with them to advocate ideas that are important to the community, to the industry that they're all a part of. And that's really, right now, is a very timely opportunity to communicate those very purpose-driven, those very authentic types of conversations and drive those messages forward, and not have the brand do it, but have people who represent the voice of the customer, because they are the customer. And it's sort of like this combination of user-generated content, influencer marketing, and content marketing, really, if you think about it. And that's something that's really exciting that I'm seeing right now in the B2B space, specifically with working with industry influencers, because so many influencers are clever about how to create content and media in ways that brands just don't have the resources to do. And the result can not only be content that has greater reach, greater engagement, but it can also drive the business forward.
Right. Yeah, thanks for that answer. We are slowly approaching the end, but I added this section for inspiration, because it feels like that's something we're a bit in great need of now. So thought it'd be amazing if we could just pour a few ideas and say what we found, some brands that we found are doing it right and how they're doing it now. Let's start with you, Alex. What's one example that you'd share?
There are some great examples. I mean, as I said, I'm a big fan of what small and medium business owners do. But if we take a look at the big brands, what I love is, let's take Volkswagen as an example. They were using their 3D printers to not produce cars, but respirators to help the German hospitals, or H&M, or a lot of different fashion stores who were shifting to producing masks, right? Also from a branding perspective, you have Coca-Cola or Audi who were slowing the gap of their logos to show like more distance, or breaking the gaps that we are more connected. So there are a lot of great ways, and probably the common denominator between those is, once again, to show they care and to help with the assets they have, instead of trying to sell as much as possible, because now it's not the time of maximizing revenue, it's the time of maximizing, we are here and we are there for you.
Yeah, connection with your audience.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. How about you, David? What's one example you'd share?
I really think that I really like looking beyond other brands and marketing, and just, same with the publisher and influencer model. But someone like Bon Appetit, who is creating shows like a test kitchen, right? Like, brands don't really create anything like Bon Appetit Test Kitchen, where it's really just their staff in a kitchen just trying to create different, like a Pop-Tart, like a gourmet Pop-Tart, right? Like, that sort of content is great. It's entertaining. I mean, I certainly have streamed more YouTube shows, Munchies, and, things like the Bon Appetit, things like that, that I believe become a really great source of inspiration. I feel in marketing, we kind of create this echo chamber and everyone emulates one another till you have this amalgamation of the same marketing looking thing sometimes. And I think magazines and networks are doing a really interesting job as a source of inspiration to emulate and learn from, and see why people are, trying to learn how to make sourdough bread across the world. It's created in a different format, so I really like looking at those sort of things for inspiration from a brand to learn from and apply to what's right for their voice in a format that's right for that particular channel.
Yeah, yeah, right. Okay, how about you, Lee? What's one example?
Well, in the B2B space, before I talked about this idea of a social first campaign where more B2B companies are exploring not how to directly sell, but create value from a content perspective. And I know of a company that Monday.com, which is a project management software company, did a really good job at kind of surfacing what are the key questions that buyers are having, their customers are having right now around the idea of, wow, now we have to figure out how to work remotely. What technology might we find to help us do that? And that's pretty explicit, but even tangential questions around that. And they implemented a social first campaign that worked with industry experts to answer those questions on LinkedIn. And the goal was to hit maybe 1 million social impressions with this one campaign, which I think was pretty darn ambitious. And it's over 400% that. And the reason why is because there was a lot of attention paid to, really authentic questions and answers from these influencers. So it wasn't packaged, crisp, super produced types of media here. It was just, hey, this is how I feel. And we don't know the answers to the questions, or this, I failed and here's what I did. And now it's going a little bit better, or yes, it's successful and here's what I did. Whatever it is, it's real. And it's really quite resonated. The key there is, of course, it's happening in a place where businesses networking is happening. And of course, that's LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's honestly, it sounds like a brilliant idea, because it feels like what people would want to ask these questions to experts, but you don't just go to an expert and ask a question. So having Monday.com facilitate that conversation feels so authentic and yet, useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if people decide to find out more information, they can. If they don't, they don't.
Yeah, exactly. Just this not selling thing again, right? Just offering what you have, obviously tying it to who you are and what you offer, but not selling directly. Yeah. Okay, so we are very close near the end. I had one more question, but I think it's a bit too late for that. I just want to thank you, all of you, for taking the time to do this and for having this conversation. It really feels like we've drawn some pretty cool insights here, and I hope more and more brands will jump on social now to just try and see what works for them. If it does, if it doesn't, there's a lot of other things they could do, right?
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night, day, and day once again to everyone.
All right. Cheers.
All right.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye now.